who's within 10 years or so of each other, different John.
Okay, so the author, probably you say the author of 1st, 2nd, 3rd John is also the author of what?
The Gospel of John.
The Gospel of John. Okay, okay. Right. So it's only 2 Johns that you're talking about there. John of Patmos and John the disciple.
And John the disciple, John the author of these books, and John the author of Revelation. Yeah, possibly 3 different people, not the same.
So the disciple of John not necessarily wrote any books, period. Not necessarily. Okay.
But there's enough connection between the writings, the Gospel of John, 1st, 2nd, 3rd John, phrases and the like that link together in thinking, that most scholars will believe the same author wrote all of them. But in any case, what we have here is also church conflict when John's writing these letters. And so, again, he brings love into the conflict. You've got to treat each other in a loving manner. And that means there's a part in here about listening. You got to listen. You can't just talk.
There's a legendary story. It's not scriptural, of course. I think that you probably, I think I told you, and I think you've heard it before me, that John is the one still living in later years, the guy that lived to a ripe old age. Whichever John he was in a congregation there somewhere in Asia Minor, and they would ask him at the end of the service to come and say some words before the congregation. And he would make his way down, feebly with a cane, I guess, and he would say, turn to face the congregation, and he'd say, love each other. And then he'd go back and sit down in the pew. So somebody asked him after, how come we always invite you down, Brother John, to say something, and you always say the same thing? Love each other. And he said, because if you do that, it's enough. So,
well, and that's Jesus. Jesus basically said, you know, if you love God and love your neighbor, you will keep all the 613 commandments. You'll keep them all. If love is the basis of what you do, you don't have to worry about memorizing all the commandments or going down a checklist. If the basis of what you do is truly loving, you've got it. And so, yeah. But we don't want to do that. My frustration in trying to preach is people don't want to hear grace and love talk. They don't want to hear about unconditional love. They want conditions because somehow it makes us feel better. These people are wrong and they're bad. Therefore, you know, let's get right understandings. And we feel better if we are certain. Certainty is an anxious response. So when I'm anxious, I want to know this is the way it is. I want to know, I want to be clear on that. So one of the reasons why people love to hear preachers tell them exactly what to do and what steps to follow is because it calms their anxiety. Now I know what to do, I'll just do this. The fact that they don't take responsibility for what they're doing and it's somebody else telling them how to live their life doesn't bother them. Because in the midst of anxiety, we get so uncertain that we just want things to be clear. And clarity, rules provide clarity. So when we are most anxious, my experience is that the more anxious we are, the more rules we create, the more data we need to have. Anxiety spawns data. And so when I'm more anxious, whether it's making a purchase, if I'm really anxious about I have so much money, what am I going to do with it? How am I going to spend it? Man, if I'm really anxious about that car I'm going to buy, I can spend a ton of money on researching everything there is about it. AAA, Consumer Reports, Kelley Blue Book. I will spend money if they've got a special report just to ease my anxiety that the car I'm buying has an actual chance of being good and lasting a few years. But it's all about my anxiety. And the fact that I always buy the car I intended to buy to begin with shows me that the research had nothing to do with it. All I'm doing is calming myself down and giving myself information so that I give myself permission to buy it and my anxiety gets lowered enough that I can actually spend the money. That's how I do it. I don't know how you do it. But I don't go out there looking what's the best car for me and now evaluate all the research. I go, this is the car I want to get. Now convince me it's not the right one. Yeah.
Did you always wanted the truck?
Yeah, I always wanted it. I had one until my wife gave it away.
Nissan.
Yeah, Terry remembers it. I drove into town with 2 vehicles. I had a Nissan, 3 vehicles. My wife had her car. I had 2. I had a Nissan pickup and I had an Audi something or other. And the Nissan pickup only had 160-some thousand miles on it. The Audi had 240,000 miles on it. And vehicles weren't all that important to me, obviously. But anyway, once I got married, things changed. All of a sudden, my vehicles aren't good enough. They're not safe. I go, what do you mean they're not safe? Well, you can't open the driver's door, but it's got a bench seat. I just slide across. Well, the speedometer doesn't work. The speedometer works. It just needs to be calibrated. So I had on my dashboard, if it says 35, it really means you're going 50. So I figured it out. It was there. You know, the brakes don't work. The brakes do work, you just got to pump them up. I've been driving this thing. This was a part of me. This was like breathing to me. I didn't think about this stuff, you know? And so I took the truck and we're staying in the Residence Inn up in Costa Mesa right after we moved here. And I'm driving in one day and there's a tow truck. And I stopped him. I pulled and found, you're stealing my truck. And then I looked down the parking lot, and there's my wife with the papers in her hand. She gave it to the Red Cross. She towed my truck away. 2 weeks later, she towed my Audi away. Both my cars. It didn't happen. That's still a subject. So I've always wanted a pickup. I had a pickup, she gave it away. Thought there'd be cars I'd be more comfortable in and the like. And then discovered, you know, you're not going to change. You really don't care about your comfort. You care about things I don't care about. So here's our compromise. I got to have a truck. She got to pick out which one. She said, if this is our main vehicle, then I'm picking out a truck I'm willing to sit in. I'm willing to ride in. I'm willing to drive. I'm willing to haul people around me. And so that was it. And I go, okay. I get a truck. I don't care. So the truck I have is not the truck I wanted. It's the truck she wanted me to have.
It's called love.
That's patient, kind, doesn't insist on its own way. So she gave up on getting the truck out of me, and I gave up on having my old beater truck that I can, everybody, if it's a snowy day, they all get off the road because nobody wants to meet me. That's the truck I want to be driving in. You know, he's got nothing to lose. Pardon me?
What kind of a truck is it? A Ford, Chevy?
I have a Ford right now.
Ford?
Yeah.
Nice truck.
And she's got it because her legs are short and it's got a button and the pedals come up to meet her feet so she can drive it. And it'll lift the seat up so that she can see over. Very helpful to her. That's important for her for some reason. No, I got my truck. It's got stuff in it I don't need, I don't want, I don't care about, but that was more important to her. So yeah, thanks for bringing up the whole truck subject. Lots of stories in Bill's life. But but the concept of love being behind it. The studies that have been done out of the University of Washington say that 69% of all issues in marriage are unresolvable. You're just not going to agree. But that does not determine, the amount of issues we agree on does not determine whether the marriage is a good one. That's not it. It's how do you treat those issues? What are you willing to die for? How does love get in the way of saying these just aren't that important for me? We don't have to agree on everything. My feeling is, when I apply that principle then to the church, is if in marriage you have two people who love each other, who dated, who courted, who did everything they could to get together, and they disagree on 69% of the issues, what do you think the number is in the church? It's got to be higher. So we are not a church because we agree on all the issues. We're a church because we're united in Christ, and I believe it's the love of Christ that unites us, and it's the call of Christ to love others that gives us our sense of mission and why we exist and what we do. And if we lose that and we get into purity, we've gone backwards in our faith. We're not moving forwards. Let me explain what I mean by purity. In the Old Testament, there were purity codes. These are the codes that as we read the New Testament, we read Paul, they're wrestling with the clean and the unclean. A lot of the dietary laws were about purity. And so this purity cult in the Old Testament, these codes, they would have levels. If you were this, and I think there were 12 different levels that they had between clean and unclean. And you just kind of went down the list of who's at the bottom of these purity codes. But the purpose of this was to set the community of Israel apart from their neighbors, apart from the world, so that people could look and see these people live a different life. And because they live a different life, they're healthier. They live longer.